Hello BookTube. I've got a brand new tag for you today. This is the Crimson Shadow book tag. It was created by Bucky749, and I'll leave a link in the description down below to his original video. But let's just jump into these questions. Question 1. The first manga, comic, or graphic novel you ever read, one or all three if you like. If not, the first movie you saw that was based on a comic. So these questions are obviously going way back into childhood, in which I have to admit my memory may not be exact. So I'm just going to try and guess as best I can what the first comic I read was, which I think was one of those Disney Uncle Scrooge or Donald Duck comics. My parents actually didn't provide us with a lot of comics when we were young. So I never had a comic book collection until I was like 16, or well, 15 really, 15, 16. But of course, you know, you read comic books, you read them occasionally at friend's house or at school, etc. And the very first time I remember reading comics was at I believe it was a Big Boy restaurant. No, it wasn't Big Boy. What was the name of it? There was a local restaurant, I forget the name, Bill Knapp's. Bill Knapp's was the name of the restaurant. And they would have comics that kids could read while they waited for a table to be seated. Then you could take the comics with you and you could read them while you waited for the food to come, which was a brilliant idea, especially in the era before smartphones and iPads, where you needed to keep the kids occupied some way. They always stocked the Disney comics, the Donald Duck, Uncle Scrooge ones. I don't remember clearly, but probably a lot of them were reprints of Carl Barks comics, because those are the classic Uncle Scrooge, Donald Duck comics. And those are the first ones I remember reading. Now, in terms of graphic novel, I guess it depends what you define as a graphic novel, or what's the difference between a comic and a graphic novel. I guess one definition is a comic is, you know, just one of those loose paper magazines. And a graphic novel is like a proper book. And if that's the definition, then the first graphic novels I read were collections of newspaper comics, you know, like Peanuts or Heathcliff or Calvin and Hobbes. Other than that, the first bound copies of comics I remember reading were, or at least spending my own money on, was during the early 90s when the Dick Tracy movie came out. There were a lot of reprints of Dick Tracy comics, so the celebrated cases of Dick Tracy, the Dick Tracy case file, which were bound collections of some of the more famous Dick Tracy storylines. But is that a graphic novel or not? Because it's not one continuous story, it's just a collection of previous stories. So in that case, the first graphic novel I read, which was one continuous story, might have been The Death of Superman. Which was a reprint of, I believe, 5 issues which comprised the Death of Superman story. Or possibly The Picture Bible, which might count as a graphic novel because it is all one continuous story. So I'm going to count that. The first manga I ever read. So manga became popular with the generation after mine. I think I was still one of those pre-manga teenagers. I mean, it was out there, but it wasn't really mainstream when I was a teenager. So the first manga I remember reading, other than just flipping through stuff casually, because it did exist when I was a teenager, but it wasn't mainstream. Sorry, when I say exist, I mean available in America. But it wasn't until I went to Japan that I remember really being exposed to manga. But what's the, and I guess it depends by what it means by read, because I would try to read a lot of Japanese manga as I was learning Japanese. But yeah, the first stuff I was able to read cover to cover, or attempted to read cover to cover, I guess would have been the manga of Tezuka Osamu. His Firebird series, I think, was the first one that caught my interest. So yeah, I'm going to say that. Now, for all of these, I may be misremembering. Maybe there's a manga I read in high school and I just don't remember it. But that's my best guess at it. The next part of this, the first movie you saw based on a comic. Again, childhood memory gets a little bit hazy, but probably it was the Christopher Reeve's Superman. That was definitely the one that made the biggest impression on me as a child, at any rate. Number 2, which book or series have you reread the most? So, historically, I have not done a lot of rereading. I've been trying to do that more recently, as something that BookTube has gotten me doing, is getting into the habit of rereading books. But as a kid, I didn't really reread a lot of books. I was of the mindset that you read a book, you were done with the book, and then it was time to move on to the next book. Of course, I reread comics all the time. So all of the previous comics I mentioned, any of the graphic novels I owned, the Dick Tracy, the Death of Superman, the Picture Bible, all of those I read and reread so many times. But I mean, the only other thing that comes to mind in terms of something, a book I've reread, would be the Bible. So I grew up religious. I went to church several times a week. I also went to private Christian schools where we studied the Bible. And I don't know how many times I've been through the stories in the Bible over my life. Now, there are some parts of the Bible that get read more frequently than others. But yeah, I guess if there was a book that I've read multiple times, it would be the Bible. All right, number 3. The Shadow or the Phantom? Which is the better character? And have you read any stories containing these characters? So I am familiar with both of these characters by reputation. I've read the Wikipedia pages for both of the characters. I've vaguely interested in both of these characters in the sense that I'm interested in a lot of retro pulp icons that I've not actually read. But no, I haven't read either of them. I guess I'd be more interested in the Phantom than the Shadow. But why? Why would I be more interested in the Phantom? I don't know, just because there's something about the aesthetic of the character that intrigues me more. And perhaps the character was briefly resurgent in the 1980s because he appeared in a cartoon show called, what was it called? Defenders of the Earth, which I never actually saw as a kid, but I was aware that it existed. I had a coloring book that was tie-in to it, so I guess, yeah. I've got more of a nostalgic connection with the Phantom. Number 4, H.G. Wells or Rex Stout? Which is the better writer in your opinion and why? So I've never actually read any Rex Stout. I've read, I think, 5 books by H.G. Wells. I've read The Time Machine, War of the Worlds, The Invisible Man, The Island of Dr. Moreau, In the Year of the Comet, or In the Days of the Comet, I forget the exact name of the book, and Men Like Gods. Okay, so I've got, I guess that's 6 books, huh? And enjoyed them all to greater or lesser degrees. The Time Machine was absolutely brilliant. One of my favorite books of all time. I think that was just so well done. The War of the Worlds, is good. I found the plot of the War of the Worlds to be a little bit more plodding, a little bit more okay. You know, the Martians are attacking. Now they're attacking again. Now they're attacking again. And it didn't hold the same magic for me as The Time Machine, but, you know, still a classic. The Invisible Man, I've read twice, once in middle school and once a couple years ago. And appreciated it much more the second time. Felt like the prose style and the combination of humor and terror and the balance between both of them was very well done in The Invisible Man. Yeah. So I like H.G. Wells. I wish I had read more of him, and I guess that will be one of my reading goals for the future, is to read more H.G. Wells. But I really like H.G. Wells. Rex Stout, I guess one of these days I'm going to have to check him out. I know Bucky749 has recommended the Nero Wolfe stories to me on numerous occasions. Nero Wolfe is, I guess, apparently what Rex Stout is most famous for. So yeah, I haven't read any Rex Stout, but I'll have to check him out someday. And then number 5, biography or collections of essays, which would you rather read? Well, generally speaking, biography. I'm a history nerd. I like reading the life stories of famous people. But you know, it depends on which collection of essays we're talking about. A number of years ago, I read a collection of George Orwell's essays. And those were brilliant. Now, granted, these were kind of George Orwell's best essays, but then a collection of essay books generally do represent the best essays of the author, right? Yeah, that book, I just enjoyed every single one of those essays. Thought that they were very fun to read. So, but we're talking in general here, aren't we? So in general, I think I would prefer biographies, if we're talking in generalities. And then last one, tag someone. So these questions on this tag are very narrow in the sense that they they're not broadly interpreted to different reading tastes. They're targeting very specific books. So that could limit how much people are able to participate in this tag if you've not read some of the specific books or authors that this tag is targeting. On the other hand, you can see that I've obviously made a full meal out of this without having read everything on the list. So I think you could still have a go at this if you wanted to, but I'm going to mention some other booktubers, and we'll just consider all these tags optional. I mean, I know tags are always optional, but consider this especially optional. If you want to dive in and give these questions a try, I think it could be a lot of fun. On the other hand, if this doesn't represent your range of reading, fair enough. But William over at William's Library, Reading Ideas, Mindy at Mindy's Book Journey, Jay Shea, Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading, Dane Cobain, and Jim at Jim's Books, Reading and Stuff. Consider yourself all tagged. Thank you.